Good morning. It is a good morning. That's right. It's a great morning. For much of this past quarter on our Sunday mornings, we've been talking a lot about discipleship. We've talked a lot about the reality of it. We've talked a lot about what it looks like in the life of a Christian, and kind of behind the curtain of Christianity. We've talked a lot about that. Hopefully we've addressed maybe some misconceptions. Maybe we've opened up some people's minds about what it's about, and hopefully we have a little bit better understanding about discipleship and what it looks like to walk like Jesus. Okay, and there's plenty more sermons, plenty more lessons we could go into, and maybe next year we'll get into that a little bit also. But before we move on into what we want to start talking about with our next quarter, kind of the fight quarter as we're calling it, I think there still needs to be some discussion about what discipleship does not look like, and kind of looking at the wrong approach to discipleship. I don't want to miss this before moving on. I don't want to miss talking about this with our discipleship talks, and some of you are probably thinking now, boy, as if he has not stepped on my toes enough. Now we got to talk about this. But hey, look, my toes have been stepped on too in this. Okay, I get it. This is not a call you out kind of a sermon. Okay, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I don't want you to get the wrong impression, and I'm not trying to do that. But this is a part of what disciples need to know. Because for a while we've talked about all about what it should look like and the right kind of approach, but we also need to talk about the wrong kind of approach. If you're going to get a new job or something, or you might go to your manager and say, "Hey, what do I not need to do so I don't get fired here?" Right? You might go figure that out. That way you do what you're supposed to do. I think discipleship to Jesus is one of the hardest things a person could ever do. To try and walk in the footsteps of the master teacher, I think that's one of the hardest things a person could ever do. That's quite the challenge. Okay, and I believe that some people, probably have their idea of what all of that looks like, and I think other people have their idea of what that might look like. That to them, this is what discipleship is, and this is what it means, and this is what it looks like for them in their life. And whatever that is for them, it might be right, it might not be. Okay, now I'm not here to correct anybody necessarily, but I do want to shed some light on the wrong. At the front end of the chapter, right up there at verse number 2, we get a large crowd that was following him because they were seeing some of the signs. They were seeing some of the miracles which he was doing on those who were sick. So Jesus went around, we know that. We know he went around healing sick people. And there's a gathering of people now. There's a gathering there that's following him because they're intrigued. They're interested in Jesus and what he was doing. And so they're following him around. I mean, he's basically a celebrity. Okay, and so he then, from there, we're just grabbing some context, but he then goes up there on the mountain, and the crowd follows him up there as well, and that's when we read about him feeding the reasons. But sometimes they come for selfish reasons. Sometimes they come for selfish reasons. A lot of people, they want to come to Jesus because, hey, they believe that he can fix their life and he can fix their problems. And sometimes they come because they want peace in their life, and they want blessings from God, and they want forgiveness, and they want salvation, and they want heaven. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. I want those things. But you know what sometimes they're not interested in? the spiritual component. They want to come, sometimes people want to come to Jesus because of what they think they can get from him, but they may not be willing to walk away from their lifestyle. They want all of the benefits from Jesus that they hear about and know that he can give them, but they're not willing to surrender to Jesus. And folks, I'm just telling you that is the wrong approach to discipleship. That's the wrong approach to come to Jesus. Because look, it's not necessarily about how much I can get from Jesus or how much I could benefit from his people. It's about how much I can give to Jesus and how much I can give to his people. Now, Jesus actually tries to help them. He tries to help them understand. Look what it says in verse 27. He says, look, guys, after he said that, he says, look, don't work for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to eternal life. And they're like, well, what should we do then? What should we do so that we may work the works of God? And then he says there in verse 29, believe. Believe in him whom he has sent. That's the work. That's the work of God that you need to be focused on. You need to be focused on the spiritual things of God rather than just your physical appetites. And that's the point here we're trying to make. Jesus is trying to help them see that their mindset is not in the right place, and he exposes that. And now, you know what's scary about this, though? What's scary is, on the outside, it looked like they were devoted. On the outside, it looked like they were following Jesus for the right reasons, but Jesus saw right through them. Jesus saw right through them. And if you look at that crowd, nobody ever would have known. Nobody would have known, but Jesus did. He saw right through them. Somebody said this: their motions look right, but Jesus questions their motives. Folks, when it comes to discipleship, I think one of the biggest questions to ask is what exactly are we trying to get from Jesus, and what are we willing to give Jesus? And I think the challenge is for all of us, and is just to do an honest assessment of our motives and recognize that Jesus can see right through everything. He can see right to your heart. We've got to make sure that when we come to Jesus, we have the right motives. It matters. That's very important. Okay, now, the conversation doesn't stop, actually. Okay? Jesus tells them that they've got to be focused more on the spiritual things of God rather than just their physical appetites, yet they still come back. They still come back, and they're like, well, okay, well, what sign do you give us? What sign do you do for us so that we may see and believe? What work do you perform? Because, hey, our fathers, they ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Now, you see where their mind is. It's still on food. It's still on food. It's still on the wrong things. And then that's when Jesus is like, that wasn't Moses that gave you bread from heaven. Listen, my Father gives you the true bread from heaven, for the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And they say, well, always give us this bread. And Jesus is like, I am the bread. They're after another sign. We need another one. Just give us one more. Just give us. They're after another sign. We need another one. Just give us one more. Just give us one more, and then we'll believe. Yet this too is also part of the wrong approach to discipleship. And that is coming to Jesus with the wrong expectations. You see, it's like this sometimes in our Christian world today, and I'm sad to say that sometimes it's like this even in the church. Okay, sometimes people are only interested because they want to see a sign. And it may not be miraculous signs that they're after, but it's in the same vein. It's in the same vein. Sometimes when people, when people are like looking for a place to go or they're looking for a place to attend, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that people start sifting through in order to make their decision. And hey, I get it, okay? I totally understand. I understand that people have preferences and maybe they want to put themselves in the best possible place to where they and their family can thrive. I get it, okay? But sometimes the mindset in people is far from the mindset of discipleship. Sometimes. Okay, and the list of things that people work through is almost no different than what people here in John 6 were after. I mean, sometimes people look for things and they say, well, what programs do they have? Well, do they have a youth ministry? Who's the youth minister? Do they have a children's ministry? I mean, do they have small groups that get together? What events do they have going on? Do they have any activities going on there? How active is the church? How does the congregation feel? Is it a welcoming congregation? Is it loving? Because if people don't talk to me on a Sunday morning or ask me out to lunch, I don't know if I'm going to go there. Sometimes people ask about the worship. Is it uplifting? Does it stimulate me emotionally? Is it going to make me feel good? How's the singing? Is it drab or is it stimulating? Is it moving? And of course, you always get this one. How's the preacher? How's the preaching? Right? Who's the preacher there? Does he speak well? Does he have that wow factor? Can he keep my attention? Does he keep you hanging on the edge of your seat? How long does he preach? How does he dress? Does he dress well when he preaches? Does he tell good stories? Is he funny? Because if he's not any of those things, if he's nothing to my liking or entertains me in some way, I may just attend elsewhere. I may attend elsewhere. Again, look, I understand some of that. I understand some of those things aren't wrong, okay, and to look for and ask about. I've asked some of those questions. But look where the focus is sometimes. People have their focus on all of these things and sometimes on all of this extra stuff, yet discipleship may never cross their minds. And they have the wrong approach. And even Jesus tried to tell these people, he's like, look, you're focusing on the food that perishes instead of focusing on the bread that's eternal. Me. And you see, that's where a lot of people get tripped up. And they lose their focus on Jesus and they ask the wrong questions. You may not ever hear those questions being asked like, can I grow here as a Christian? Is this a place where it's going to be, they're going to challenge me? Am I going to be challenged here in my faith? Am I going to be pushed to grow here in my knowledge? Am I going to be equipped in Bible classes to get what I need to be a better Christian? Is there a sense of fellowship here? Like with God and everybody else? Is there community? Is there real communion? Or is leadership going to faithfully lead me and watch over my soul? You don't hear a lot of those questions. And you see, sometimes people's minds just are not there. It's on everything else other than discipleship, to where it's almost like they have to have something special that gets them there. They've got to have something exciting. They've got to have something stirring. And typically, you know what? Typically, if they have to have something special that gets them there, They're going to have something special that keeps them there. And you know what some people call that? Consumeristic Christianity. That's a thing. Consumeristic Christianity. Now, you know what a consumer is. A consumer, it means you're a user, you're a shopper, you're a buyer, a customer. Okay, and the idea is sometimes that's how people treat their Christianity, to where it's like they have to constantly be fed. They have to constantly consume, or they're out of there. They're not so much concerned about growing and developing their relationship with God and Jesus and His people. They're not concerned about discipleship. They are just there because of how it can benefit them and what they can get out of it. They don't think about, what can I give? How can I serve? How can I offer? Or what can I offer the church? Or what can I do for Jesus? That's not where their mind is. There's a guy, he wrote a little book, very easy read, short read. Thomas Rainer. He wrote a little book called I Am a Church Member, discovering the attitude that makes a difference. And he talked about being a church member and what it's not and what it shouldn't be about. And he said, as a church member, my motivation should not be to get my preferences to the top of the list. I'm supposed to be last, not first. I'm supposed to be a servant instead of seeking to be served. And then in another place, he said this: so if we approach church membership from the perspective of entitlement, we have it upside down. He said you always ask first what you can do for your church, then you will have discovered, I love what he said, the joy of being last. Sometimes people come with the wrong expectations, and they're looking for the wrong things. They're looking for what satisfies. They're looking for what's flashy. They're looking for a sign. Well, what they should be looking for is Jesus. And getting to a place to where they can have a better relationship with Jesus. Now, for the record, Jesus did not grant them their wish, because that wasn't going to do it for them. And even if He had given them another wish or another sign, it wouldn't have done it for them anyway. You know why? Because they weren't there for discipleship. They weren't there to believe. They had their mind in the wrong place. They had the wrong approach. Folks, we've got to have the right approach when we come to Jesus. And we've got to be looking for the right things and expect the right things. Toward the end of the chapter now, John tells us that Jesus spoke about Himself in ways that a lot of His disciples found difficult to listen to and accept, because He was talking about Himself being the true bread that comes down out of heaven. And His flesh is true food, and His blood is true drink. And whoever eats His flesh and drinks His blood abides in Him, and He in them. And it was a little bit difficult for them to take. And they said this. They said, who can listen to it? Pay attention. Not understand it. Who can listen to this? And Jesus knew that some of the disciples were grumbling about it. And He said, does this cause you to stumble? I mean, what I'm talking about me being the true bread and the true drink and all, does that cause you to stumble? He says, I mean, if you can't accept this, what's going to happen if you see the Son of Man ascending to where He was before? If you can't accept this, you going to be able to accept that? You see, Jesus knew that some of them did not believe. Verse 66, and as a result, many of His, catch what it says, His disciples,
meaning the people that were first interested in him, the people that witnessed him healing all those sick people, the people that were following him and they got fed, many of those people, many of his disciples at that juncture, they went away and were not walking with him anymore. Why? Why? Because they were not willing to listen to Jesus anymore, confronting them and pressing this idea that they need to focus more on the spiritual things and a relationship with him instead of the flesh that profits nothing, and they walked away. They left him. I'm out of here. I don't want to listen to that anymore. See ya. The wrong approach to discipleship, walking away from Jesus when Jesus tells you something you don't really want to hear. All the people that were following him in the beginning, they were interested, but the moment he started pressing them about their motives, and when he tried to tell them the truth of the matter and what they needed to do and what they needed to hear, they were out. They were out of there. And sometimes this is how it is with people. People come, people want Jesus. They love the idea of it, but when he presses them with difficult statements and sometimes things that are hard to hear, it becomes pretty evident real quick who is there to have their needs met and who is there for real discipleship. Becomes pretty real quick. Sometimes when people get pressed with the truth, they're not interested anymore. And they don't want to walk with him anymore. And that's when Jesus actually turns to the 12. He turns to the 12 and he's like, do you also want to go? What about y'all? I mean, is this difficult for you guys to accept? Do you want to go with them? And of course, that is when Peter says, Lord, to whom shall we go? To whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life, and we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God. Only the people who were truly interested in a relationship with him, those were the ones that stayed. Peter and the rest of the apostles, they weren't just interested in what they could get from Jesus. They weren't just interested in another sign. They didn't need that. They had seen enough. And the only thing they were interested in was Jesus. Because they had come to understand that he was the Holy One of God, and he, nobody else, he had the words of eternal life. Folks, that should be our motivation. That right there. That should be why we draw near to God and why we want to draw near to Jesus. That should be why, and that should be why we stay. Even when things get difficult, even when things get hard to hear, because there's no other alternative but Jesus. That's worth sticking around for. That's worth sticking around for. Listen, may our motives be right. May our expectations be clear. May we have the right approach to discipleship. Let's stand and sing.